I'm a LinkedIn trainer. I teach people how to use LinkedIn. One of my superpowers is not only getting people to tell their story, but also to connect to other people who want to hear that story. What you don't want to do is become a faceless part of any corporation, whether you run your own business or whether you work for anybody else, etc. I used to do a lot of marketing workshops where I would use, for example, a Terry's chocolate orange. So I used to smash one into the middle of the table and say, right, everybody take a slice. But what does a Terry's chocolate orange teach you about marketing?
From the city of Peaky Blinders, Birmingham, England, I would like to introduce you to Paddy Dhanda.
As the world becomes more automated and the robots take over, it's imperative that we build the right human skills for the future. So pull up a chair, grab a samosa or two, and make yourself very uncomfortable. Hey Gus, how are you doing? I know you're from Coventry. It's a place close to my heart as well. But how is it going today for you?
I'm good, thanks. And thanks for having me, Paddy. I appreciate it. Yeah, Coventry is the center of the universe. That's what I tell people. So, yeah.
I don't think you're too far wrong. I was originally from Warwick and we were talking about this just before we kicked off. And it is fairly central in the UK, right? So yeah, might not be too far from the truth there.
To be honest, I love living in Coventry simply because it's really easy to get around, and I don't want to bore you with the whole transport infrastructure system of the UK, but yeah, it's really easy to get around. Flights, trains, cars, all the rest of it. So yeah, I love it. I can go and meet anyone I like whenever I want.
Brilliant. I sometimes ask my guests, like, if you had to sell your city to someone for them to visit, what would you say? So I think you're already starting to sell it to me. So it's got good infrastructure. What else is like one big thing that you would recommend about Coventry and why people should come?
Coventry is often seen as the poor relation to the UK's second city, which is Birmingham, which is right next door. But actually, it's a very multicultural society. It has everything here. It's right at the center of the transport infrastructure. We don't have the hustle and bustle of the big cities, but we have all the shopping, all the bars, all the restaurants, and all that kind of stuff. And to be honest, on top of all of that, I'm here. So surely that's the biggest selling point. Yeah, kind of thing. Come and have a coffee with Gus in Coventry.
There we go. There we go. I'm surprised you haven't mentioned Lady Godiva because she's pretty famous.
Oh, she is, yeah, but she died ages ago. So but yeah, we have a statue dedicated to Lady Godiva, the lady that kind of rode through the streets naked as a protest to essentially taxes kind of thing. Actually, I think we should bring that back. I think we should get rid of taxes and yeah, we should parade naked through the streets. How about it?
I'm behind you. So as long as you're in front.
That's yeah. Okay, this is taking a dark turn. This conversation. Yeah, let's move on.
I just remember the clock. There's like a clock in Coventry. I don't know if it's still there, but then Lady Godiva comes out, and she like when it hits a certain hour or something. Is that when she comes out?
Yeah, no, it's the Peeping Tom clock. So there's the story of Peeping Tom is Lady Godiva obviously walking naked through the streets, and there was a kind of like a Peeping Tom that would look out and all that kind of stuff and watch her. And actually, so it's like the world's worst cuckoo clock in the center of Coventry. So where the statue is, overlooking the statue is a clock. So every hour, the Peeping Tom comes out and essentially looks at Lady Godiva and then goes back in, kind of thing. So yeah, it's cool. It's very clever, but you have to know the story. Otherwise, it just looks weird.
So folks, definitely visit Coventry. If it's for nothing else, check out the Peeping Tom clock because that's a memory I have. But it's got lots of great things. I remember even the cathedral because you've got the old cathedral that was bombed during one of the world wars and they preserved it.
Yeah.
They've got wonderful stained glass windows on there. So that was a good school trip that I did when I was a young kid.
It's a beautiful building. Yeah, absolutely. It's a really beautiful building. And it's really, because obviously you've got the old bit that was bombed and they preserved that. It was obviously decimated in the Blitz. But then you've got the new cathedral kind of like right next door, which is absolutely beautiful. So yeah, come and check it out.
Amazing. Right. I think this podcast is going to turn into like a tourist podcast for tourism.
Yeah, absolutely. Visit Coventry.
Yeah, no, we provide value. So that's it. We're providing people value. And Gus, which superpower would you like to bring to this particular episode?
So it's interesting. My superpower, I think, is I talk a lot about personal branding in terms of who I am and helping other businesses and particularly business owners with their personal branding. But related to that is the power of connection. And I think because I do a lot of work on LinkedIn. I'm a LinkedIn trainer. I teach people how to use LinkedIn, and I focus on, well, one of my superpowers is not only getting people to tell their story, but also to connect to other people who want to hear that story.
Nice. I love that because that's how I actually came across you in the first place. I remember you popped up in my feed, or maybe somebody I was connected to had commented on one of your posts, and your post was right there in front of me. And then I was like, this guy sounds interesting. He's got a cool profile picture. He's got like some brand colors. I love that
Mm.
kind of feel. And yeah, ever since I've been intrigued by your posts, and I was like, I've got to get him on. Got to get him on the podcast. And then to top it all off, you're Punjabi. So I was like, right, there's another Punjabi guy out there. I've got to bring him.
Yeah, we're practically related. I think that's the thing. So, if you're from Warwick, I'm sure we know each other's families, and what village we come from in India and all that kind of stuff. So,
For sure, for sure. So talking about personal branding and kind of uniqueness, I, for many years, worked for big corporates, the likes of BT, IBM, Deutsche Bank. So
hmm,
these are big, thousands of people across the globe in each of those companies. But I always tried to suppress much of my uniqueness, my culture, my Punjabiness, because I felt like I had to fit the mold. I had to be the guy wearing the suit. And then all of a sudden, I lose that identity and I'm now part of that corporate identity. I mean, how have you found it? Because you're sort of pushing against the grain a little bit to say, well, actually, you should embrace that and really, use that as a superpower. So, can you tell me a little bit about why is that so important that you don't lose that identity?
absolutely. I think particularly when we are talking about ourselves and when we use kind of social media or marketing or etc., or when we meet people in person, it's really hard to lie. It's really hard to then maintain those lies. And when I was young, my mother once said to me that if you don't tell lies, then you never have to remember anything. Because I think that's the thing. Because obviously with the world that we live in now, if you are just yourself and you never lie and people take you at face value, etc., you never actually have to be anything other than yourself. And I think particularly on social media and particularly on LinkedIn, it's lots of people don't be themselves. They're not intentionally themselves. And I always tell people, be intentional, not just be yourself, be intentionally yourself. Like really bring out whether it's your religion, your color, your what you wear, what you're into, what music you like, what food you eat, your family, your friends, all that kind of stuff. Because that's a big part of who you are. And ultimately, we're all unique. When you start blending in, you're forgettable. And when you become forgettable, then obviously you become dispensable. And I think that's the biggest danger. It's one of those things that you have to stand out for being you. And quite frankly, if people don't like you, that's fine. You'll find somebody that does. So I think that's the important thing. It's about finding those people that like you for you.
And I'm relating this to, again, many people that I know who will say, oh, I don't do social media. Like I do my job and that's it. And I get that because social media often gets a bad name, and there's different forms of social media, I guess, as well. But for me, LinkedIn has been a really great platform because it is for professionals, although that's questionable at times when we see some of
Mhm.
the posts that are going out there. But generally, it's a great place to A, learn, but then secondly, to connect with like-minded people. And you can really accelerate your learning because there's always events and things that might help you in whatever you're doing. But I often do see many people playing it safe. I don't post anything. I'm just going to be an observer here. I guess with the world we live in at the moment, especially with AI and the disruption that's going to happen yet, I don't think it's happened yet, but
Mhm.
it will at some point, where there will be more and more automation and people's jobs will change for sure. What advice would you have for tech people that are taking that approach right now?
I think for me personally, like when I had a proper job, when I didn't work for myself and all that kind of stuff, it was rare that I would post on social media because, quite frankly, I go to work, I do my job, and then I come home and I get paid like no matter what. But I think, what you don't want to do is become a faceless part of any corporation, whether you run your own business or whether you work for anybody else, etc. The last thing you want to do is become faceless. And I think one of the things with AI in particular is the fact that it's faceless. Anybody can use it. Anybody can use it to, now we have like artificially generated like videos of people talking and talking in different languages and various videos and various situations and all that kind of stuff. And I particularly think that if you have, well, not if, everybody has uniqueness. And I think particularly we have to bring that uniqueness out of us to then show other people who we are, etc. And I think particularly, you're absolutely right, AI hasn't disrupted the market yet, but it's on the verge of disrupting the market. And I particularly think that as soon as they get to a general AI model where you have like sentient beings and all that kind of stuff, and the AI eventually will develop emotions and all that kind of stuff, and all of a sudden we're gonna be on the back burner and people aren't going to know us, etc. And I think particularly we can use our marketing, our social media, or our LinkedIn to really sell ourselves and sell our uniqueness and be intentionally ourselves. And I think it's a fascinating, the way the world is going, it's fascinating to watch that AI, but ultimately AI is just based upon what's already existing in the world. And while it does that, it can't coexist with us because we're unique. So I think that's the thing. What we need to do is exaggerate and exasperate and make sure that we tell the world who we are and what our uniqueness is.
And if someone out there is already on LinkedIn or someone who's thinking about doing more and really sort of refining their profile, making it better, making it more engaging, where can people start? Like, what would be the first step that you'd recommend for somebody to really go on and actually review and take action?
Well, over the next 4 hours, I'll be explaining what we should do on LinkedIn. No, just kidding. Not 4 hours, 3.5. The first thing is content. So, like related to the last question as well, there are over 1 billion people on LinkedIn, and less than 5% of them are creating regular, consistent content. And as far as LinkedIn is concerned, consistent content is just one post a week. So just by posting once a week, and it could be anything what that post is, but just by posting once a week, you fall into kind of like the top percentile of content creators on LinkedIn. Because as you said before, most people are just using LinkedIn in terms of they're scrolling, they're viewing, they're looking, but they're not liking, they're not commenting, they're not reacting, they're not engaging, they're not posting, etc. So I think posting is a really big thing. But related to that, it's all about the kind of outbound engagement. Now, we'll talk about outbound engagement in a moment, but your question in terms of the first step, the very first step is to optimize your profile to make sure that it says all the right things. We need, like we said off air, it's all about the banner that we have at the top of LinkedIn. Most people either don't fill that in or just have just a generic banner, and that's what is prime real estate. It's like a billboard right at the top of your profile, as you said. So that's obviously something that we should have. We should obviously have a beautiful profile picture to make sure that we look like exactly who we are. But I would say that the most important part of LinkedIn, if you do nothing else, the most important part of LinkedIn is the headline. It's the bit that sits under your name in terms of telling the world who you are and what you do. And I think that's the most important thing, because that's what people read. Beyond your banner, beyond your profile picture, etc., that's all visual. But people will read the bit that it says in your headline. And if you don't tell the world who you are and what you do, they'll scroll past, they'll switch off. Because like I said, 95% of users on LinkedIn are just scrolling. And if they don't see what they need in your headline, they'll just scroll past.
And I often see people use their headlines, sort of talk about their job titles. So like, I'm a manager at company XYZ, or I'm a director here. What makes a good headline? Are there certain ingredients?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always ask yourself, like, who cares? Generally, nobody will care that you're the CEO or a director or a manager, etc. And it's like job titles are just, they're not there to define us. So I have something called the famous Gus Bandow LinkedIn headline template. I should trademark that actually. So it's 4 elements, which is what, who, how, why, which is what do I do for a living? Who do I do it for? How do I do it? And why should you work with me? And particularly the what should be the first few words. When you engage, we talked about outbound engagement in terms of liking, commenting, engaging with others is really important. Now, when we do that, what then ends up happening is that people see our headline, people see our profiles, etc. So the very first part of our headline should tell the world what we do. So mine actually says the UK's #1 LinkedIn trainer. For those of old enough to remember the Ron Seal marketing strategy, it does exactly what it says on the tin, right? And then the rest is who do I do it for and why should you work with me, in terms of I teach you how to use LinkedIn. I work with small business owners. I show you how it works. So ultimately you can get more inbound leads and make more money and get more clients and then be successful and make sure that your wife doesn't leave you and your dog doesn't walk out and all that kind of stuff. You can put the rest in your about section, but ultimately your headline is what, who, how, why. So that's the kind of the template that I use and the template that I teach others to use.
Yeah, just as you were talking that through, I was pulling up your LinkedIn profile just in the background. I was like, I've got to see his. And, just from your headline, I understand what you do and why you do it and for who, etc. But I also get an element of your personality because you said the UK's #1 LinkedIn trainer, but then you have a little asterisk, right? And I was thinking in my head, can you say that? Like, I am the #1 at this, like, without qualifying it. But then I love your little asterisk and the explanation at the end of it, which says, according to my mum.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't argue with mums, right? That's the thing. And obviously mums are always very proud of us and they'll tell the world that we're the greatest at whatever we do. And it's that little tongue-in-cheek joke that essentially when I started calling myself the UK's #1 LinkedIn trainer, essentially what happened was I got two kinds of people that would jump into my DMs. And one bunch of people would be like, oh, that's really funny. And I'd love to work with you because you're obviously very jovial. And that's the kind of content we want to portray and create for our organization and our brand. Great. That's exactly the kind of people I want to work with. But then I got another part, which was very much like, what gives you the right to say that? What are the metrics? How is that quantifiable? And I'm like, you need to take it over with my mom. What can I do? And they're the kind of people that I don't want to work with because they're obviously they don't understand the joke, or they're not very jovial, or they argue with me. And particularly I find other LinkedIn trainers, particularly those that aren't very good, would spend a lot of time arguing with me about that. And thankfully, I can just say, go and speak to my mom. They don't have a landline, so they're not going to get to talk to my mom. So it doesn't matter. But that's not the point. That's a different story. So, but yeah, it is that, like you said, and I appreciate you noticing that. It's the personality-led element of LinkedIn where I'm attracting the right people that want to work with me.
It reminds me of the Carlsberg adverts. By the way, there are other reputable brands. The one that sticks in my mind is Carlsberg, because they used to make these bold claims that if Carlsberg did this other thing, they would, and they always use the word probably, they would probably be, the best in the world at that. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And it's on one hand, it looks like a bold claim, but the way, because obviously I've added an asterisk, they use the word probably and things like that, because there's always that element of doubt. But thankfully people can see through that and see through the kind of, and get to the kind of the joviality of it, rather than think, oh, I'm now going to look at these metrics. I'm going to go on yougov.com and have a look at, is Gus really the #1? I'm going to do a poll about it or whatever, etc. Because I think when it gets to that level, they're not the people I want to work with. So.
And the other thing I noticed about your profile, sorry, we're dissecting your profile right now.
Absolutely, please.
Is the brand colors. So you're very on brand. First of all, the look, got your kind of clothes that you wear, very smart, very slick. And then the colors, orange seems to be your like #1 primary brand color. Tell me a little bit about that and the thinking behind the clothing and the colors.
Sure. The color. So I used to do a lot of marketing workshops where I would use, for example, a Terry's chocolate orange. So I used to smash one into the middle of the table and say, right, everybody take a slice. But what does a Terry's chocolate orange teach you about marketing? And ultimately, it's about segmentation and kind of segmenting different parts of your audience and all that kind of stuff. Then, as I started my own business, I spoke to a branding expert. We came up with logos and taglines and all this other kind of stuff. Particularly when we were working on the branding, we looked at a variety of colors. And none of the other colors worked. I looked at purple, I looked at silver and a couple of others. I wanted a warm color. So when he showed me my kind of branded orange, I was like, that's the one. And then he was like, what about the background color? I said, make that black. Because obviously not only does it make the orange stand out, but actually there's two elements to this. So a lot of luxury brands use the color black, whereas the color orange is a very warm color. And then it gets me to tell people about orange chocolate. So hopefully they send me loads at Christmas. So it's the two colors that kind of go together. And actually, so it started from the Terry's chocolate orange, then it was spoke to a branding specialist. And now I wear orange trainers. I sometimes wear orange bandanas. And a lot of it is that brand element that when I walk into a room, people will see me as opposed to seeing somebody else. And then people will talk to me about my bandana or my trainers or my turban or my suit jacket or my orange tie or whatever it may be. Because I think again, it's that element of standing out. So it's all very well standing out online, but there's no point being a wallflower when you go out networking or to events and etc. So hopefully people see the kind of the continuity of that theme, whether online or whether they meet me in person.
Oh, nice. And so I've talked to you about your headline, the banner. I absolutely get the fact that that is prime real estate. That is
Mm.
the big bit visually that people will see on your profile, aside from the little profile picture. And then I'm going down to the kind of the about section. How
Mhm.
important is that? And again, looking at yours, a ton of information on there about who you're helping, how you help them,
Mhm.
what are some of the ways people can get in touch with you, etc. Again, I see a lot of tech people, and look, even if you're not self-employed and you're working for an organization, this is your chance to sell yourself as an
Mm.
individual, right? So again, what are some tips you could give tech people, even the kind of the about section of their profile?
Every tech person or every individual has a skill. Unless you work in a call center where you say, my skill is answering the phone, and it's the same as the other 1,000 people that work there. But really, in most, and particularly in the kind of the tech world, you have your particular skills. You've been employed because your CV says something particular. So if you can share that in your about section, it will stand you head and shoulders above everybody else because it's I have this particular skill, I have this particular education, I have these particular letters after my name, etc. And I usually say that your about section should be an extension of your headline. So if your headline has the famous Gus Bandal LinkedIn headline template, which is what, who, how, why, your about section should be an extension of that. So essentially you write content, paragraphs, bullet points, whatever it may be, that answer those kind of four questions. What do I do? Who do I do it for? How do I do it? And why should you work with me? And like I said, because everybody's unique, they'll be able to share their own stuff and kind of make sure that they stand head and shoulders above everybody else and those around them. As you can probably see from my content, and particularly my about section, I'll also talk about other stuff like here and there in terms of I'll make reference to my mom, or I'll talk about the fact that I've got a kid, or I'm married, or I like orange chocolate, or whatever. I watch Match of the Day, or whatever it may be. It's all that kind of stuff that brings out that individuality kind of thing in terms of this is what I do for a living. This is what I'm good at. This is what makes me unique at work. So this is why you should work with me. But also we can talk about X, Y, Z. Like I talk a lot about the fact that I support Liverpool FC and I don't work with Man United fans. So and all that kind of stuff. So because nobody likes them, right? So yeah, you're not a Man United fan, are you?
No, I'm Liverpool, but I'm so
Oh,
glad I am now. Otherwise, I'd be in
yeah.
trouble. You'd probably cut
Yeah.
this
Otherwise
interview short.
it'll be a very short interview. Yeah. I'd be like, okay, bye. But yeah, but seriously, I think it's bringing out that uniqueness, however we wish to bring it out. And I think the about section is actually the perfect place on LinkedIn to really deep dive into that, as opposed to the 220 characters of the headline, because that's a very short kind of headline. So the about section is where we can really build on that.
And I often see LinkedIn tell me you were searched this many times this week or this month. And it gives me kind of analytics of how many people found me through the search.
Hmm.
So I'm guessing when people type in certain words, then your profile might come up. So how important is search engine optimization or SEO? And which bits of your profile should you be optimizing for searches?
So I would say that it's very important, and particularly having keywords across your profile is really important. The places where I would put keywords are your headline, your about section, your experience section, which is the kind of the CV bit, as it were, and then at the bottom, the skill section. So particularly when people search for particular words, like I'm hoping that when people search for phrases like LinkedIn or social media or marketing, etc., I fall into those searches. And actually, LinkedIn is very good in your analytics. It will tell you these are the terms that people are searching for, and these are the searches that you've fallen into. And obviously, if you look at those words and like, I don't do any of that stuff, what that probably tells you is that you should add more of what you actually do onto your profile. And I think that's important. I used to work in inward investment and economic development, and I used to get found for those phrases quite a lot. So it's a case of reducing the phrases that you don't want to be found for, but adding the phrases that you do. And like I said, it's headline, in your about section, in your experience section, so where your current job is, and then in the skill section at the bottom. But ultimately, you want to put it everywhere. Like I do social media and I do LinkedIn. So those words are literally like all over my profile, wherever you can find them. But the full parts that I mentioned are the main places where you should add those keywords, because obviously you want to be falling into those searches.
And if we move on to posting and
Hmm.
putting content out there, again, that can be quite overwhelming for many people that have never done it before, or just knowing where to start. Like, what kind of content should I be putting out there? Again, do you have any tips for anyone out there who is struggling to come up with ideas, and where could they start?
The very first tip that I would give people who are starting to create content on LinkedIn or want to start creating content on LinkedIn, or indeed any social media platform, but mainly LinkedIn, is that every Friday, write a post about what you've been doing this week, because there's nobody else that can write that post. So just journal your week. I call it the Adrian Molification of LinkedIn. So just journal your week, treat it like a diary. Monday, I saw a new client. Tuesday, I got a testimonial. Wednesday, I bought a pizza for everybody in the office. Thursday, I bought a new piece of equipment. Friday, I'm posting on LinkedIn or whatever it may be. Because what it does is it gives people an insight into your life, into your week, and what makes you tick, etc. So you can intersperse it with work, because ultimately you talk about work, but also you include content about what makes you tick and what other things you do around that. And I think it's particularly as people start, the reason people connect to you or the reason people follow you on LinkedIn is because they like you, because they want to know more about you. So if you're connecting to people and they're not creating content, essentially you're losing that audience, whatever that audience is interested in. So if you have more than one follower, you should be creating content. And I think for everybody on LinkedIn has more than one follower, right? Or one connection, I should say. So I normally suggest start journaling your week, like on a Friday. As time goes on, when we talk about content, then it can be individual content based upon those things. So, for example, if you go to a networking event, then you talk about a networking event, who hosted it, who you met, what you did, you have good conversations, etc. Or exhibitions, or events, or new clients, or new equipment that we bought in the office, or a new job, or whatever it may be. It's creating individual pieces of content around that, which essentially tell the world what we do kind of day to day. Because that's why people connect to us, because they want to know. Ultimately, as humans, we're voyeurs, right? We care about other people, and we're really nosy, and we want to know what they're up to. And if nobody tells us, then quite frankly, we'll go and look at somebody else. So.
It's really interesting. When I look at my posts, I often find it's a post that creates some kind of emotion in people that do really well. And that could be, I don't know, I've just delivered a training course and I put a fun picture on there. So there's that kind of humor. Or like maybe my kids have done something and I have some message or learning coming from that. And people seem to connect with that type of content versus me going, hey, here's a new framework for how you can be a super collaborator or whatever that thing is. So it's quite interesting. Your daily life can spark a lot of emotion in people. And I can see how that type of post would really do well, because people could be like, oh, I had that same experience this week, or, oh my God, that's amazing. You did that. I didn't even do half of that stuff. Like you're sort of comparing yourself, and there's probably lots of emotion that's going around.
There's a lot to be said about resonating with people's content, or finding content that resonates with you, I should say, in terms of we all have a life. We all do things in our lives. And sometimes if somebody else said something, and I know we make a joke about, oh, that guy supports Liverpool, so I support Liverpool as well, and we should have a conversation. But actually, it's a conversation starter. It is one of those things. Every 6 months or so, I introduce myself on LinkedIn, or reintroduce myself. So I'm like, I'm Gus, I support Liverpool FC, I do this, I do that, etc. The last time I introduced myself, I wrote in there, I really like doner kebabs, but I don't drink, so I eat doner kebabs sober. And even though the rest of the post was like, I do marketing, I've got loads of letters after my name, I've got nearly 30 years of marketing experience, etc., Everybody ignored that. Most people wanted to talk about doner kebabs. And it was just, but it's fascinating because it resonates. And when you start talking to people, then, I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't want to be known as the LinkedIn specialist that likes doner kebabs. That's not, that's not my stick for now. But it gets people talking. And I think that's the thing. As soon as you create content that resonates with people, whether you talk about food, whether you talk about football teams, whether you talk about your children, whether you talk about your achievements and all that kind of stuff, that's what resonates with people. As soon as I write a post that says, I'm a LinkedIn trainer, this is how much it costs, would you like to buy my stuff? That gets crickets. That dies a death, basically. But obviously, we have to sell. But we intersperse that kind of content with stuff that resonates with others, because that's where we get the engagement. Because like I said, people are connecting to us because they want to know more about us.
And is there any recommendations on, like, first of all, the frequency you should be posting, and like when should you put a post out there about the selling side? Is there a frequency to say, well, you should do at least this many posts that are more value oriented, and then the every fifth post is something about your services? Any advice on that?
The best advice is you should test it and do whatever you want. However, that doesn't really answer anybody's question. So when it comes to the frequency, I normally recommend you should do roughly around 2 to 3 posts a week. That's like an ideal amount. Some people post every day. Some people post twice a day. I know one LinkedIn trainer that suggests posting 4 times a day, which is obviously completely inane and ridiculous. But I recommend posting 2 to 3 times a week would be my recommendation. Generally posting when you think people are online. So most people are online when they get up or before they're about to start work in the morning, etc. But in terms of the actual mix of posts, I have an arbitrary figure of 70-30. So I would say that, so out of every 10 posts, 7 of them are very kind of jovial or about, like my life or what I'm up to, etc. Whereas 3 of them will be very specific, like, here's what I sell, please give me some money. Here's how you give me your credit card details. Do you know what I mean? And it's that, but it's a very arbitrary figure. It's entirely up to you. The important thing is that if you only did 100% of one or the other, like if you only talked about what's going on in your life and never sold, you'd never sell anything. Whereas if you only ever sold stuff and said, this is what I sell, people will eventually switch off. And then your content will die and your profile will die because everybody just thinks, oh, I know what that guy does. So I'm done now. I don't. Do you know what I mean? He keeps telling me, he's told me 10 times in a row now, and now I'm sick and tired of this guy. So people stop engaging. So it's having the balance, but finding the balance is the tricky bit. But like I said, I have an arbitrary kind of 70-30 figure, because ultimately you have to sell, but you have to treat your audience well so that they hang around and they engage with you and etc. But on top of all of that, don't forget the outbound engagement stuff. Make sure that you go through your feed and engage with others and like and comment on their content and find content that resonates with you and all that kind of stuff as well. So LinkedIn is not a broadcasting channel. It's a two-way conversation, like a networking channel.
Oh, that's a great point about the outbound engagement. Why is that important? Because surely you can put everything about yourself out there and you'll get loads of followers. Like, why do I have to engage with other people and on their posts?
Now you see, I know you're being facetious, but the thing is, at the most basic of levels is the algorithm, right? The algorithm encourages people to engage with each other. Now, ultimately, the way social media works is, for most people, it's free, because there are some people that pay. People who pay for, particularly on LinkedIn, people pay for LinkedIn ads, or they pay for Sales Navigator, or they pay for Premium, they pay for Recruiter, all that kind of stuff. So for the most part, most of us can use it for free. If we're going to use it for free, LinkedIn wants to encourage us to engage with others and use the platform how they want us to use the platform. If we just turn up, post something, and then leave, and then hope that somebody sees that and gives us £1 million, LinkedIn will downgrade that content. They won't show it to many people. Ultimately, our business will die, our wife will walk out, our dog will run away, and all that kind of stuff. We don't want that. So the algorithm encourages two-way conversation. And apart from anything, it's altruistic, right? It's unselfish to talk to other people. And actually, it's a nice thing to do. If people are bothering to create content, if they bother to connect with you and then create content that you may want to read, it's only polite to then engage with that content. Obviously, if it's something worth reading and you want to engage with it, etc. Not only is it good for the algorithm, it's good for our soul. It's good to engage with others. Because ultimately, if it is like a networking event, the last thing you would do in a networking event is walk in, hand out your business card, and walk straight back out, right? That's obviously nobody wants that. You walk in, you start talking about the terrible coffee or the breakfast you're about to eat or the weather outside or how long your journey took and all that kind of stuff. And that's where people really get to know one another. And it's the same on LinkedIn.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, I'm so glad you clarified that. And I mean, some of the things that I often hear is by commenting on other people, your profile becomes more prominent because other people then like your comment, and then all of a sudden they're like intrigued and going, "Oh, I'm going to check
Mm,
this guy's profile out. He seems to be saying some sensible stuff, hopefully sensible stuff." And again, it's a great way of increasing your following. The other quick
mm,
question I had was regarding the formats of posts. So LinkedIn has quite a few different formats now. Like you can do
mm.
pictures, you can just do text, you can do carousels, video, like all of the different types.
Again, it's one of those, the official answer is you should test it because actually, this is a classic case of do as I say, not as I do. What works for me is actually text only posts because I know my audience like to read the copy that I write. Whereas I know other people do really well with videos and other people that do well with images and all that kind of stuff. So it's the wishy-washy answer is, oh, just test it, do whatever you want. But really, every different medium has a different type of engagement. So at the moment, document posts are doing really well. For those of you who are like Instagram specialists, that's a carousel post. But on LinkedIn, we can't call it carousel because it doesn't sound very professional. A document post, it's exactly the same thing, but sounds much more professional, right? It's when people say slide deck instead of PowerPoint presentation. It's exactly the same thing, just sounds more impressive. So a document post is essentially a scrollable document on LinkedIn. The way you would do is if you have multiple images or multiple kind of etc., you would put them in a PDF in essence and upload that PDF as a document post. The reason that does well is people, if it says the right things and people enjoy the content in that document, they will scroll across. And LinkedIn, the algorithm recognizes if this person is hanging around on this content and scrolling through, that means that content is good. So we're going to show that content to more people, basically. And the same with me, when people read my text content, because they start at the beginning and they'll click see more and then read to the bottom, because they're spending more time reading my content, the algorithm recognizes, hey, look, people are hanging around reading this content. So we're going to show this content to more people. Conversely, what I have found is that there's a sweet spot when it comes to video. If you have a video which is roughly anywhere between 5 seconds to about 2 or 3 minutes, that's I normally would recommend that's the sweet spot. Anything over that, people then really have to sit and listen and hang around and all that kind of stuff. In the same way they would listen to a podcast or watch a YouTube video or watch a series on Netflix or whatever it may be. And I don't think LinkedIn is properly geared up to that yet. So if you create lots of short form video, like for example, reels on Instagram or TikTok videos and all that kind of stuff, repurpose them and stick them on LinkedIn because actually I think they do really well on LinkedIn as well. They are now. LinkedIn are encouraging kind of portrait style videos and all that kind of stuff. So that was a really long soliloquy to essentially say, do whatever you want, but make sure the content is engaging enough for people to hang around, whether it's long form text content, whether it's an article, whether it's a newsletter, whether it's a document post, also known as a carousel, or whether it's a video, make sure it's engaging and enticing enough for people to essentially stick around and not scroll past.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much, Gus. And if we kind of move towards the end of this particular conversation, is there one other bonus tip that you can give people about LinkedIn?
The tip that I always give, which is, again, it sounds like the most blasé of kind of comments, but be yourself, be intentionally yourself, but actually journal your life, talk about who you are. I think the people that come to prominence are those that talk about themselves and talk about what's going on, but also create content that resonates with others and all that kind of stuff. And ultimately, you're the only person that can tell your story. So AI will not be able to create a journal of what you did this week. It could, but it'll be full of lies, right? Kind of thing. It'll be based upon what already exists on the internet. Whereas only you have your experiences, whether you went to Legoland or played with your kids or went to a networking event or got a testimonial or saw a new client, etc., etc. You're the only person that has those experiences. So I would say my tip would be to create content on LinkedIn or indeed any social media platform that is intentionally yourself, because only you can be yourself. And it's that unique content that then brings an audience into us that helps us grow our audience, make friends, make connections, find clients, make lots of money, become rich, retire, etc. Move to West Brom or something like that. So
Definitely know where's from if you're rich. Yeah, there's
yeah.
plenty of other places. Yeah, maybe go back to Warwick. That would be a good place
Yeah,
to
of
retire
course.
one day. But no, thank you so much, Gus. So I'm going to move on to one of my favorite questions in the interview. If you could have any superpower to abolish something in the world of work, what would that be?
If I could have a superpower to abolish anything, I mean, to be honest, I should think about this harder. I'm sure there are better superpowers, but the one and it's only because I thought about this earlier this morning. I saw a post on LinkedIn this morning where somebody said, "Oh, I keep creating content that gets 1 million views, and I've had all these followers, and etc. etc." And basically, she's gone from 0 followers up to about 50,000, kind of like in the space of like what feels like 5 days, kind of thing. It's a little bit longer than that, but actually, my really rubbish superpower would be to find out when people on LinkedIn are in engagement pods. Like, I really want to know who's in an engagement pod, which is essentially a group of people that all like each other's content because then it makes their content look popular. But actually, they don't really have any friends. They're not really making any money. Nobody really likes them except this group that they pay to like them, kind of thing. So, my awful superpower would be to find out who is in an engagement pod and then out them, kind of thing, like take their mask off, like at the end of Scooby-Doo, kind of thing, like this guy is in an engagement pod, yeah, that kind of stuff. So yeah, that would be my work related superpower.
Oh wow, I didn't know such things existed. I thought like there were
Yeah.
bots. I've heard, people offering services where you can buy so many likes or whatever on different
Mm.
platforms. Didn't realize like people are actually paid to like your posts. That's
Yeah,
nuts.
yeah. And the thing is, it becomes really obvious because they all either say the same things or they write the same comments or they're all just talking to each other. But on top of all that, they seem to have like hundreds of thousands of followers, kind of thing, or connections, which they've developed like really quickly. Like, people just turn up and say, "Hey, I'm a 6-figure LinkedIn creator." And it's like, last week you were like stacking shelves in Tesco. Like, how has this happened? Where have you got these 100,000 followers from? And it's all that kind of, the problem is a lot of people are enticed by that. A lot of people fall into that kind of, that by that kind of grandeur and that strategy. Like, oh, look, this person has like 100,000 followers, so they must be really good. So actually, that might be another bonus tip in terms of always do your due diligence. The vanity metrics of somebody having 100,000 followers doesn't mean they're actually good at what they do. Have a look at testimonials, have a look at their work, speak to them, talk to them, but don't always fall for the figures, kind of thing. Which is generally a mantra for life, to be honest, as well, kind of thing. So
Yeah, no, great point. And I have actually seen some people that do claim to have all these followers, and then you look at their posts and they've probably done like 3 posts, and you're like, with 3 posts, you've got like, this many thousands of people, but like that's a
yeah.
big red flag right there. Thank you so much, Gus, on that. And if people want to, continue their learning journey, are there any resources or people that you recommend people follow? And also, how can people get in touch with you and if they're interested in getting help from yourself as you're an expert in this field?
No, I really appreciate that. Well, first of all, if anybody is from my audience listening to this podcast, you should definitely go follow Paddy. So that's the main thing. The people that I recommend. So I run a LinkedIn conference. We ran our first one earlier this year in 2024. We've got another one next year. The two guys that I hosted with, so Jeremy Freeman and John Espirian, they're like two of my favorite kind of LinkedIn creators as well. John Espirian calls himself, he's trademarked the relentlessly helpful LinkedIn nerd, kind of thing, because he really does a lot of technical work. So I can talk about LinkedIn in terms of we create content, we should have these connections, and he really goes under the hood and he's like a real technical, like coder, software developer kind of guy. And I love his content. So John Aspirin is one. If people want to hang out with me, then yeah, just come and find me, Gus Bandel, on LinkedIn. That's where I do my best work, basically.
And we'll include your profile link in the show notes as well. So people, if you're driving, don't stop. We'll be in the show notes, and I'm sure Gus will wait patiently to send him a request or a message.
Absolutely. Or indeed send me orange chocolate. I'm happy with that as well. So yeah,
there we go.
I love bribes.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Gus. It's been a pleasure getting to know you a little bit better since the conversation started, and I feel a lot wiser about LinkedIn. You've got me paranoid about my profile now, so I'll be checking it out and refining it a little bit too. So
Sure.
Thank you so much.
The pleasure is absolutely mine. Thank you for having me, Paddy.
It's the end of another episode. Thank you so much for listening. Please do connect with me via LinkedIn and drop me a message and let me know your favorite takeaways from the episode. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Superpower School newsletter so that you can be notified of all future episodes. Simply visit the website www.superpowers.school. Thank you once again.